The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Stauber, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Governors, it's great to see you. Welcome to the fourth administrative state where unelected bureaucrats make rules that affect us all, oftentimes in a negative way. To me, this is, as Mr. Curtis spoke about, I think this is a way for our federal government to take chunks of land to stop development. You know, in the Iron Range of Minnesota, we have the biggest copper nickel find in the world. It's called the Duluth Complex. Trillions of dollars of minerals there. This administration wouldn't even allow an EIS to go forward. They removed 225,000 acres from development. This is what they're trying to do. And we can talk at these hearings. This administration is going to do what they want to do. I never thought as a member of Congress I would have to vote to defend using gas stoves in our homes across this country. But we did. And just last week, the Army Corps of Engineers removed a water permit that they gave just 4 years ago. The EPA remanded this water permit, first time ever in the history of this country. We feel the pain, and as Mr. Curtis talks about the western states, I want to add the Midwestern states too. This is happening in Minnesota and other states. They would rather push this agenda than allow the American people to live free. As Ronald Reagan says, as government expands, our liberties contract. And as governors, you're seeing that in your respective states. I believe this is another rule and a tool for this administration to assert control and take away our lands from the people of this nation. Mr. Gordon, Governor Gordon, in your testimony, you shared your frustration with the lack of stakeholder input that the Biden administration considered when crafting this proposal. If the BLM actually listened to your constituents in Wyoming, what do you think they would have heard from them on this dangerous precedent that these so-called conservation leases would have on our federal leasing? Would they fear the federal government pairing future productive leases with conservation leases, or utilizing conservation leases to strategically block off other areas from permitted activities? Can you comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, a very good question. It is interesting that no one thought to have a field hearing anywhere near my state. And as a result, that testimony is lost on the BLM. I think one of the biggest challenges, and you've mentioned it, is the lack of consistency and the desire by the federal government to kind of control the future of this. Wyoming has a variety of BLM lands. My ranch, for example, has BLM land holdings in it. If those are put into conservation leases, it could quite conceivably affect the way we operate. That could, for many families in Wyoming.
I would submit to you, Governor, that it will. If this goes
I
through.
agree with you. And I would also say, Representative, that you could break ranches. You could break families that have been on the ground for generations. And here's the deal. If they weren't focused on sustainability, if they weren't focused on conservation, they wouldn't be in business now. So it would be an irony to say, out of conservation, we're going to break the backs of ranchers who have shown conservation ethic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor Noem, it's great to see you once again. And real quick, just like in my district in northern Minnesota, public lands play an important part, a role in your everyday lives of those living in South Dakota. As you mentioned in your testimony, entire facets of your economy are built, both figuratively and literally, on our precious public lands. If this rule is finalized and the BLM gains this tool to weaponize federal lands, what effect is it going to have on your state's economy?
Well, thank you, Congressman, for the question. It'll be dramatic. What's interesting to me is that if you read the rule and the analysis the BLM has put out on the rule, is that they've done no economic evaluation. In fact, they've openly declared that this is not a major rule, does not have more of an impact than $100 million on our economy, Yet if you keep reading through the rule, they've done no economic analysis and have no idea what the consequences will be if this is put into place. What's also interesting is that there's a real lack of environmental data as well. They don't know how this is going to help, and they make no attempt to even define that our stewardship of the land will actually get better. They openly say that there will be public input, yet do not conduct and follow through on that. Our people have not been heard from, other than the ability to submit comments, which I would say the ranking member referred to people such as land managers and elected officials in some states having an important voice because they're in bigger states. You know, in my world, everybody matters. It doesn't matter if you're big or small or important or not important. You should listen to them, especially if they're making a living off the land. But you have submitted for the record comments from many, many associations of people that engage in recreation, grazing, the Cattlemen's Association, many, many more that have submitted comments against this rule. So I would encourage you to, even though they're not going to conduct public hearings because they don't want to hear what they're going to have to hear, I would say look at those comments that are being submitted to the formal record. And again, in this rule, there's some mechanisms to allow them to stop putting things in the federal record and to stop taking public input at all. Right. So that's another overstep that the BLM made promises years ago that they're trying to do away with in this proposal in front of you today.
Thank you very much, and my time's up. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentlemen,